Coming up now on Animal Outtakes, inspiring environmental stewardship. We're visiting the Florida Oceanographic Society, located in one of the most biodiverse ecosystems in North America. This group is working to protect and preserve Florida's coastal ecosystem. From seagrass restoration to research and advocacy, follow along as we learn about this education center in Stuart, Florida. Plus a little hands-on experience with the stingrays that's meant to leave a lifelong impression. I have one that looks very hungry here. Yeah. This and much more straight ahead on Animal Outtakes. Situated between the Indian River and the Atlantic Ocean is the Florida Oceanographic Coastal Center. It's a 57-acre marine life nature center located on Hutchinson Island in Stuart, Florida. It was created by the Florida Oceanographic Society, a nonprofit founded almost 60 years ago, and it's their mission to inspire environmental stewardship, something that's needed now more than ever. Well, we're here in Stuart, Florida at this magnificent facility. Where are we?
We're here on Hutchinson Island. It's right along the Atlantic coast and about midway down Florida, and it's a beautiful, beautiful spot where the Atlantic Ocean's on one side, the Indian River Lagoon is on the other, stretches from Cape Canaveral all the way down to Jupiter. So we're right here in Stuart, right on Hutchinson Island.
Couldn't get any better, right?
No, it's a beautiful spot. You know, it has one of the most biodiverse ecosystems in North America right here with about 10-mile radius from where we're standing. We have over 4,300 different species of plants and animals that count on the estuary and the lagoon and the Atlantic Ocean, the nearshore reefs, all for their homes and habitat.
And you do so much here. Tell us about the mission.
Well, our mission is very simple. We're established to inspire environmental stewardship of Florida's coastal ecosystems through education, research, and advocacy. Now, inspiring environmental stewardship to me is really an important mission because we want people to become stewards of their environment, particularly Florida's coastal ecosystem. So we do everything we can to get them excited and educate them and get them empowered with the knowledge and understanding about our system so that they can go out and advocate for them and say, hey, we need to protect these seagrasses or the habitats for manatees and other animals in our environment.
Now there's so much that needs to be taught and learned.
Right.
What are you doing here at the center?
Well, we try to focus on just some of the basic concepts, the basic habitats. Florida has a big history of water in our system. If you look at Florida on a satellite map, it's practically all water, you know, with a big Lake Okeechobee in the middle and all these coastal lagoons and estuaries along our shores, all the way down to the reefs and the Florida Keys. So we're real excited about talking about these environments, but we got to be careful not to overload people and say, you know, here's all you got to know and learn about it. We help our volunteers and our staff really communicate well, and we do that through these exhibits like Florida's Water Story Gallery, the Estuaries Gallery, Life Along the Shore, and the Ocean Connections to the nearshore reefs. So these 4 galleries in this new Ocean Eco Center that we have on site is really effective at helping to guide people through and get that basic understanding and get excited about all these habitats and animals that live here and plants that we need to protect.
We have problems here in Florida, don't we? And they have basically been caused by humans. And it kind of starts around Lake Okeechobee. And we've heard for years, oh, I'm going to fish in Lake Okeechobee, and everybody's pleased with the big fish that they bring home, the big catch, but they have no idea what's really going on. Can you tell us about that?
Well, as you mentioned, when we moved to Florida, we wanted to kind of drain the areas and drain the swamp and make it habitable for people to build a building on. Unfortunately, that drained a lot of the wetlands, and primarily the Everglades, which is south of Lake Okeechobee. But also the rivers and streams and the springs and all of the water that's connecting us all in South Florida here is somehow affected by what we do on land. So if we build a building or a parking lot, we drain it off into the nearby river or lagoon or estuary or the ocean, then we're causing some pollution to that. And unfortunately, when we started developing Florida, we didn't realize how much of that diversion of water and pollution of the water into our nearshore environments was causing. And now we knew. We know, we get that understanding of what we really need to do to just abate that pollution, stop the pollution, and allow the waters and the habitats to come back and restore those as best we can.
You talk about pollution. Another word equal to that, I guess, is nutrients that are getting poured into the system. How do we stop this?
Well, we just have to understand the balance that's required in the environment in which we live. And if we create too much nutrient loading, phosphorus, nitrogen, and other nutrients they over-nutrify the waters with pollution and create algae blooms or things that wouldn't normally occur. But because of our runoff and everything going into the waters and creating those higher level of nutrients, it causes that pollution. Now, everything needs nutrients to live. We all need phosphorus, nitrogen, and all the nutrients to live. But if you get too much at one time, it's not good for us. Then it's not good for the environment. So it's the same kind of thing. If our activities on land have run off this water that's high in nutrients and goes into our water bodies, it can affect Lake Okeechobee and affect the other water bodies and cause a tremendous amount of pollution, which again affects the fishes and all the things that we like to catch and enjoy. We're going to see a diminished population of those because they've lost their habitats. They've been over-nutrified, over-pollution, too much pollution coming into the water.
For the most part, do we have safe water in Florida?
We do, for the most part. I think, it's unfortunate some of the lakes and the isolated areas or even the springs have been so impacted that it's going to take a long time to stop the pollution and now let it recover. But along our coastal areas here, we're very fortunate in what we call their resilience. So when they're resilient to, they come back quickly if we stop the degradation. So if we have this huge amount of freshwater discharge into this estuary and it offsets that balance and starts really polluting the system, then once we stop it, they're pretty resilient. They can come back pretty quickly. Other ecosystems like lakes or streams or up in the upland areas or springs are not so resilient. They don't come back as quickly.
We also know that here on the East Coast, you are struggling a bit with working on behalf of the manatees and getting that seagrass to them.
Right. We've had an unusual mortality event. It means that there's so many manatees in one period of time this past year that have died, unfortunately, mostly due to starvation. And what we found out is they didn't have their food source. Manatees are herbivores. That means they eat vegetation. And the primary vegetation they eat is seagrasses in the lagoon that grow underwater, and they can feed on that. They also feed on some shoreline vegetation or hydrilla that floats on the water, but it's mainly that seagrass. And what happened last year is when all that died back from a microalgae bloom that happened in the north part of the lagoon, they didn't have their food source. So they began to starve. They have to eat about 200 pounds a day per manatee. So that's a lot,
a lot
of food
seagrass,
per manatee. And we have quite a few thousand here in our state. We're very fortunate. But if they don't have the food and they begin to starve, we've lost about 1,100 manatees last year, and that's just a record level. So it cues us in right away. We've got to do something to help. And what we're doing here at Florida Oceanographic is to help restore that seagrass habitat. And we started back in 2016 learning techniques on how to grow seagrass and effectively nursery it into units that we can put back out into the environment and watch them grow and be the seed source for new seagrass that continues to grow. So we're successfully working and researched those techniques, and now we're trying to implement in a scale-wise how best we can restore those habitat so that the manatees and other animals who depend on seagrass have that habitat restored. We want to maintain that high biodiversity. So if we just kind of didn't care about manatees or dolphins or any kind of other animals and just let it go the way it goes, and they diminished, we're losing various numbers of species every year due to pollution and the things we've caused our planet to change. So what we need to be careful of is that we don't lose so much diversity, and then we not only don't have that to enjoy for a future generation, like you and I enjoy the manatees, but what if they aren't here next for our kids or our grandkids? That'd be a real shame.
That's a problem.
And it'd be a problem because everything is connected in our biosphere, in this earth and the ocean planet that we're on. It's all connected. I mean, if something happens to this little tiny plankton critter, all the way up the food chain to the giant whales that feed on those krill, I mean, that's important.
So you are having successes?
We are. We've established the way that the oyster reef restoration projects we're doing. We collect oyster shell, rebag it, put it out in there for settlement of the new oyster spat. Millions of eyed larvae settle at a time. And we restored about maybe 20 to 23 acres of oysteries. We've seen the seagrass units that we put out go from 16 shoots per unit to 60 shoots per unit in just 3 months. So we know we have the techniques down that we can help to restore. Now we have to time it right so that we can do that during this, and at the same time we're stopping the pollution of the habitat. And I think we're going to see some success. We're already seeing success, but of course we want to see a lot more. And we want it to get back to the way when I grew up here in this area, how nice it was. And I think we can do that. I really have hope for the future.
For more information on the Coastal Center and how you can support this nonprofit, you can go to their website at floridaocean.org. Coming up next, we dig deeper and learn more about the Seagrass Restoration Program, how efforts are underway to change what's been happening in the Indian River Lagoon. That's next.
What's going to happen to me if something happens to you? That's when Dantes 10 steps in. You can make plans for your pet's continued lifetime care in the event you can no longer be there for them. Amenities include spacious dens, medical care, area to run free, and a swimming pool. Plus, all the love and cuddling your pet needs 24/7. Call us or visit dantes10.org for more information.
Florida Oceanographic Society monitors the oysters, seagrass, and mangroves within the Indian River Lagoon and St. Lucie Estuary. Now we take a closer look at their seagrass program called Foster.
Right here we have our Seagrass Nursery, and in this nursery we actually have 6 of the 7 seagrass species here in Florida. Right here, this is one of our favorite tanks. This is 3 of the main species that you would see: your shoal grass, turtle grass, and the manatee grass. This is the base of our ecosystem. In this grass, even if you just look closely, there's little snails that live in there. Those little snails are fed on by smaller fish. Those small fish are now eaten by the bigger fish that you might enjoy recreational or commercially. Then those big fish are fed on by the larger fish. And so it's this beautiful cascade of services that starts with this plant that a lot of people overlook.
Seagrass, it has become the word of the day. Why are we so concerned, and what are you doing here to make things better?
Yeah, unfortunately we've seen a drastic decline in seagrass habitat in the Indian River Lagoon over the last 20-25 years. Since about 2011, we've seen 58% of the coverage of seagrass decline, and within that 58%, there's about only 4% coverage left, which is absolutely devastating considering all of the ecosystem services that they provide. One of the main services that we know about is the fact that it's food for manatees, and so because of this decline in seagrass, we're seeing manatees begin to starve. This is also food for other species though too, whether it's turtles or herbivorous fish. It provides a lot of other services that we don't necessarily see, like carbon sequestration, nutrient cycling, shoreline protection. And so as we're losing that seagrass coverage, we're seeing the decline of those services, which has finally kind of come to a head.
In your opinion, why is this happening? And it's happened over a long period of time, but why do you think?
There's multiple reasons as to why it's happening, and it really depends on where you are in the Indian River Lagoon. But the main driver is water quality. So we had a decrease in water quality in the IRL that has really finally gotten to a point where it's really detrimental to seagrass. So when we have freshwater inflows, seagrasses, they live in an optimum range of salinity. And so if you put them in an area where it's really low in salinity, they will eventually stress and die. We've also seen a lot of harmful algal blooms. And so seagrasses, it's a plant, and so it needs to photosynthesize just like your lawn would. And so if for some reason that grass gets shaded by a harmful algal bloom, and it's not allowed to photosynthesize, it will eventually die over time. And so that's what we've been seeing.
I know you're doing magical, mystical things that are going to help just about everything in the ecosystem. What are we doing?
So we have a program here, it's called Foster. And what we do is we ask volunteers to go out and collect fragments of seagrass for us. A lot of people, they enjoy their morning beach walks or their morning Indian River Lagoon walks. And so if they're on their walk and they see a piece of seagrass that has naturally been washed up on shore and it still has a piece of root on it, they can bring it to us. When they bring it to us, then we plant it in the Seagrass Nursery. And so the water that comes to this nursery is fresh, clean water that the seagrass really enjoys. It's low in nutrients, it's perfect salinity, and that one piece of seagrass can grow into about 250 pieces of seagrass in just a few months. And so then we have this amount of seagrass that now we can take and, number one, do research to figure out how we can better restore the Indian River Lagoon, or we can use that to actually outplant for restoration purposes.
Now, is seagrass the only thing that you're investigating?
No, we have a lot going on here. Seagrass is one of our main programs. Oysters is another program where we essentially do the same thing, where we do research and restoration on oyster habitats. Oysters, unfortunately, that fishery here in Florida, or at least in the Indian River Lagoon, has crashed. And so oysters, in order to survive and to find habitat, they actually search for their brothers and sisters. So they use chemical cues to sniff out where the other oysters are. But if there's no oyster habitat out there, they can't find it and they can't settle. And so we go around to restaurants weekly. We collect all the used oyster shell that people have used at their buck and chuck or their half shell raw bar. We take those shells, we let them bleach out for a few months, and then we use volunteers to put them back into the Indian River Lagoon. And so then those shells will act as for that chemical cue, that smell that the live oysters can now find and hopefully settle and then build a reef.
So we, as participants in this beautiful weather, the beautiful water, and fishing, of course, what can we do?
We really need to be stewards of our environment. I think one of the main things, people come to me often, what is the one thing that I can do to help? And if you live on the water, don't use fertilizers, don't use pesticides. I know it's hard to think about because we all like our green lawns, but if you put that out into your lawn or into your garden, that makes its way directly into our waterways. All of our development is on sand, and our sand doesn't do a good job at trapping those nutrients and trapping the fertilizers, and instead that just washes directly into the Indian River Lagoon. Everything fits together so finely, and if you change one little thing, it cascades into changing other things. And so I really enjoy the system of our natural planet.
Do you see success at the end of the estuary?
Yes, if we can all come together and to really make a big push to change the water quality in the Indian River Lagoon and really make that our focus, I really think that things can change. Mother Nature, she can take care of herself if we just give her that opportunity to do so, and I really hope that we're at a place that we can.
For more about the monitoring and restoration efforts, you can log on to floridaocean.org. And we'll be right back with more Animal Outtakes. And now it's our turn to get hands-on. Let's see how experiencing an interaction with an animal can make all the difference. Brittany, it's so exciting to be here with you today to see these magnificent creatures. Who are we looking at?
So today, right now, we are at our Ray Touch tank. So this is our special exhibit that allows people firsthand experience to interact with our local species of stingrays. The most charismatic ones you're going to see swimming on top are our cow-nose rays. Those are the brown diamond-shaped stingrays that swim through the water column. The one on the bottom are our Atlantic stingrays with the nose shaped like an A, an easy way to remember it. And they are always hanging out on the bottom. They are benthic rays. And then we also have a southern stingray in here, but I do not see him right now. He's probably over there swimming on the edge. But these are the most common species you're going to see in our waterways, and that's why we have them here, so that people can interact with them in a nice, safe, fun way.
Right, right. Safe being the operative word.
Yes.
But when we're on the beach and we know that they will be there, what should we do if we see them?
So actually the biggest risk is when you don't see them. So the ones you see on the bottom are often going to spend their time buried under the sand. Only thing you'd possibly see is a little flicker of their spiracles as they breathe in and out. So one way to protect yourself and the ray is to do what's called the stingray shuffle. So you drag your feet along the bottom, not doing big steps so that you land on the ray, which then would cause the ray to want to defend itself and flip that tail up with the barb, hence the name stingray.
Sure.
So the best thing to do is whenever you're in any shallow body of water is to just shuffle your feet along the bottom.
Now, we're going to get to feed them, right?
Yes.
Oh, I'm so excited.
Yeah, so most of the worry people have with the stingrays is the tail end where the barb would be. Our rays, we trim their barbs just like you do your fingernails every couple months. They grow fairly slowly, so it's not like we're pulling them out all the time to do it, and it's a very stress-free process for them. We keep them wet, and we just trim them just like you do your dog and your cat fingernails. So you can see it right there at the base of the body. It's not on the tip. A lot of people think it is. Also, why it's fairly safe to feed the stingrays in this tank is they have blunt teeth plates. So their mouth is shaped like this. They do not have sharp teeth, but you want to feed them like you do a horse. Just with anything that you can stick something in, there's a potential of it being
They're going to come down on
fit.
it.
So you want to feed it with a very flat hand. So what we often do is show people to either have it like this or like this. It's easier this way so that you don't have the urge to tuck your fingers up. So you kind of press it in your hand flat like this, and then you allow the animal to swim over it just like when you feed a horse with an apple, and then it'll fill it by suction. So you lay your hand very flat, and then it will suck the food from your hand. You want to give it a try?
I'll give it a try.
Okay. There you go. So flat. They get a little excited.
Yes, they do.
And as they're swimming, you'll take note that the top things you see flicking on top are not their eyes, they are the sphericals.
I have one that looks very hungry here.
Yeah.
So you put your hand in the water?
Yeah, put your hand and then lay it flat, and then they'll swim over it. See how that one swam over my hand thinking that I had it? If you reach down just a little further, there it goes, and then let go, and it will take it from your hand.
And he got it.
They do a lot of studies on stress response on these kind of animals, just because they're in an exhibit or around people that could lead to that kind of thing. So here at Florida Oceanographic, we have very strict rules. We have designated nap times for them. And after they feed, we close the tank down so the animals can digest and get back down to a nice calm level. And then we reopen it after an hour to allow people to interact. So we also do separate feeding and touching times so that the animals don't get confused. So when you have your hand down at the bottom, that means feeding. The animal's going to swim over and engage in feeding. And then when we don't have people, your hand is more high up with your hand flat, and the animal will swim under to allow you to. You want to keep every interaction with the animal positive or neutral at best. So that they keep coming up and interacting with people, give people a great experience, remove that fear that everybody has the first time you're going to reach your hand into a tank. It's a little unnerving, but then once you do it a couple times, people really do develop a love for these animals. And that's all we can ask for. That's what helps people act differently when they leave here and become stewards, is if you're able to have that warm and fuzzy feeling, and this tank allows us to do that.
We'll be right back. Animal Outtakes is produced by Dantes Den Foundation, a nonprofit group dedicated to creating the best life for dogs. If you would like to learn more about Dantes Den, donate, or volunteer, visit our website, dantesden.org. We hope you had fun and learned a thing or two along the way. We'll be back here again next week with even more animals and more encounters. Until then, thanks for watching.